What's going on, guys? Welcome back and thanks for joining us. Today we have Donald. He is a real estate and economic development consultant. Wow, that was a mouthful. So we'll get together with him and see what he's got for us. What's going on, guys? Welcome. Please join me in welcoming Donald here. How you doing, Donald?
Doing well.
Good. So why don't we start with a little bit about yourself? Why don't you just tell us about your background? Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? Things of that nature.
Okay. So born and raised in Philly. Grew up in Hunting Park area. So North Philly, depending on who you talk to. Some people say it's Northeast. It's not really, but so yeah, born and raised in Philly. Spent most of my life here until college. So I went to Princeton for undergrad, studied architecture, got a certificate in urban studies. After that, I spent 2 years working for a small design build firm. So applied to grad school, ended up getting in, and I went to Harvard for grad school, did a master's in urban planning program. That was 2 years, did that program. And then from there, I got my current job, which is at a real estate and economic development consulting firm, which most people are like, well, what is that? But yeah, so that's what I currently do now. I've been there since 2018.
Cool. So You have a bit of a roller coaster there, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's all, I feel like everything's like related in like different ways.
Okay.
But definitely started in one place and ended up in a very, very different place.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
So what is your current job title? I know you said it was kind of like...
Yeah, so I say I'm a real estate and economic development consultant. Actual job title at my firm is associate.
Okay.
That's just like the level that I'm at, but we're all consultants.
Understood. So what led you to do architect?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think I've always just sort of been interested in design. I mean, a lot of people in these types of programs will tell you similar stories. Like I used to play The Sims and like literally just design houses. Like I would not play the game. I would literally just sit there all day and design houses.
So that really like drove you to sort of...
Yeah, I was just really interested in like design.
So tell me about why did you go back to school?
So it was more so, it was one, being more interested in larger scale things, two, being more interested in things that affected people on like a grander scale. And
Right.
That was one of my issues with architecture, at least at more like liberal arts schools or even like the undergrad level. At some places, it's like at Princeton, for example, it's very theory heavy. It's all about kind of like all this stuff out here, and it didn't feel like very grounded. And I was much more interested in how, the space affected the people. And like I said, grew up in North Philly, saw lots of things. And one of my things was, how do we make low-income communities of color that are like struggling, how do we make them better? I was trying to figure out, okay, who's responsible for that? Like what is the job title that works with communities or works in communities, and and I was like, okay, yeah, urban planning, city planning, that sounds like what I should do.
So if you don't mind, what is the starting salary for someone at your position?
Yeah, so it depends on like location and experience, of course. But in general, and then there are two parts to the salary. So in general, base pay is probably anywhere between 70 and 80.
Okay.
But then your year-end bonus is a big part of how you're evaluated, and like
that's awesome.
That's like the performance aspect of it. So that'll take you to anywhere between like 75 and 90, depending on how well the company did, how well you did specifically.
So now let's really get into the nitty-gritty. Like, what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start with like what we do as a firm. That's probably easier to help explain what I do on a day-to-day basis. So like I said, so I studied urban planning, city planning. Most people in my firm have an urban planning background. And what I'll say is like, it's kind of like we're sort of in this in-between space where we're not working for a government or like a city agency. but we're also like not a developer. We're more of like we're a consulting firm. So we work mostly with institutions. So mostly universities, hospitals, some nonprofits, some city government, on issues related to their real estate, economic development, community development. So it's a very broad field. So day to day, like I said, it can be anything from like a university to a nonprofit to a city government. So a lot of times, like if we're working with a new university and we're working on some like new real estate plan, or like what we call an anchor strategy, which is like how helping the university develop a plan for how they basically interact with their community related to their real estate. A lot of times if we're just starting a project, there's a lot of research. So we'll do like demographic scans. So I'll pull lots of census data and other data to see basically like to get to know the place that we're in. Lots of Googling just to like understand different things. Lots of if we're out there in person, we'll be meeting with different people. So if it's a university client, meeting with the university planning office, the real estate office, like I said, the president, understanding like what to better understand what their needs are, what their goals are, what the vision is for whatever they're trying to do. Like, so to simplify it, let's say it's student housing development. So a university for any reason may want to have a private developer develop new student housing. So we'll do a scan of the real estate in the area to understand like what are students who are living off campus paying, how much can they afford to pay. We may do like a student survey to understand like what types of amenities are they looking for in their housing, how price sensitive are they, things like that. So after that, so say if we're doing a student housing project, we have an idea of what they're looking for. We might do, like I said, a real estate scan. So to help the university understand like, okay, how much is this land worth? Like if you're going to, so a lot of times what a university will do is they'll ground lease to a developer because they're an institution, they don't want to sell their land. Like if they sell it, that's it, they don't own it, it's over. If they ground lease, they can set a term. So usually it's like 40 years, 50 years, sometimes it's 99 years. And what that means is for whatever that term is, the developer can build on that land, build a student housing development, retail, whatever they're going to put on there. Obviously, the university has some control over that. For that 50 years, the developer owns that building, but at the end of that term, it usually reverts to the university. So yeah, so say we're in the process and we've done all the analysis, they're ready to move on with a project. So then we'll help them release, similar to what I was saying with the city, a request for proposals. So we'll create a document that kind of outlines what the university is looking for, what their goals are. Is it, we want student housing, but it has to be affordable, or, it has to have like ground floor retail because students want, a Chipotle or whatever.
Right.
So we'll release a document that has like a general outline of what the university is looking for. We tend to have developer contacts, but with like public universities, for example, it'll just be public. Sometimes they'll release it to just like a certain group of selected developers. Developers will respond, and then we'll help walk the university through selecting a developer.
Wow.
And then if they select a developer, we'll walk them through the development process. So we basically handhold them from like, we have an idea or we have a thing we need, through like buildings in the ground. Like we don't do the development ourselves, but we help lead them through that process.
Wow.
So that's like
project management. Like
yeah, it's a lot of everything, and that's just like on the like student housing development side. If we were doing something that was more like economic development, so say university has like part of their mission is they want to be like a better neighbor in their community, or they want to interact with their community in a more positive manner. In some places we've helped them launch like workforce development programs. So we have this whole thing called Live Local, Buy Local, Hire Local that we've done in a few cities now: Detroit, Memphis, I can't think of others off the top of my head.
That's all right.
But basically, we'll work with, usually those programs are like a group of institutions. So in Memphis, we help launch a nonprofit that is kind of funded by the hospitals, and they're in charge of kind of like streetscape improvements. They do like programming. And then on top of that, they have, we have this program, Live Local, Buy Local, Hire Local. So Live Local, the whole concept was getting the hospitals to give people incentives to live in the community. Buy Local, so, you know, all these institutions, they spend millions and billions of dollars a year on different things. So like, whether it be printing, or maybe it's cleaning services, or it's construction, or whatever, like they're spending lots of money. Part of, you know, what they can do to help their community that they're in is to like spend that money locally, instead of like, you know, bringing in a large, you know, national firm to do something, or like say you're doing all this printing every year. Instead of doing that at Staples, is there like a printer in your community that you can like give that contract to, and how that's like helping bring more money into the community. So that's Buy Local, and then Hire Local is exactly what it sounds like. So within a certain area, they'll focus hiring efforts on hiring people from that community. So it's about like giving, you know, opening up employment opportunities and making sure that they are actually giving economic opportunity to people who live there.
What is the most enjoyable part of your job, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, so pre-COVID, I feel like it was definitely traveling for me, and just like getting to go to new cities. Like I said, I mean, I love, like, that's what I was interested in, just like cities, exploring.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What is the least enjoyable?
I mean, I hate to relate everything to COVID, but I think this is more so amplified by COVID, in that because it's consulting, because we have like such a like wide variety of projects, and you know, you can be working on anywhere from like 3 to 6 projects at a time, depending on like how big they are. So a lot of times it's kind of like shifting between like, you know, very different projects throughout the course of a day. Before COVID, when we would travel, say if I'm in a city and I'm visiting a client, like that's my focus for the entire day. Like that's what I'm doing. I'm not taking other calls. But now I can be like giving a final presentation to one client at 9 a.m. and then like 11 a.m. I'm on a different Zoom call, and then like 1 p.m. I'm doing something completely different. So it just becomes a lot to kind of like switch gears so much.
What is your career goal?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think in general, to work more directly with communities, whether it be like, you know, through like affordable housing development, or I'm not exactly sure just yet. But I think, you know, for now, just kind of like gaining skills and like figuring out, you know, where I think that was part of the thing that attracted me to this job, is that, you know, a lot of times working for government, there is a lot of bureaucracy, there is a lot of red tape. It can be hard to get things done. Whereas if you're working with an institution that has money and power and influence, if we can like shift them to do something a little bit better, you know, it's more likely to actually happen, and more likely to actually happen more quickly. So I think that's what attracted me to this job, and just like, you know, figuring out what that looks like long term. I'm not entirely sure just yet, but
that's fair.
Yeah.
Any accomplishment you want to talk about at your job?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like what's been cool is, you know, like I said, because a lot of these projects are like so long term, we're just getting to the point in some of them where like they're starting to implement some of these programs. But, you know, like we have a client that's looking at kind of that like live local, buy local, hire local type of strategy, and part of like our analysis was helping them realize that like actually only, you know, you have all these like however many thousands of workers, only 2% come from like this community that's right next to you, and having them like actually be receptive to that, and try to think of a way to actually make an impact. So I feel like I'm just getting to the point where like some things are starting to take off, or
that's great, yeah.
You know, like the project I was talking about with the museum and the art school, you know, there were people who who had come into this this art school space who had said like, I've lived in this city my whole life and like I've never come here because like I didn't feel welcomed here.
Wow.
So like finding a way to like actually like even just like little things like that where like someone now is like feels like they have a little bit of a foot in the door into a space that they had never been in, or things like that.
That's awesome. All right, well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. If you are interested in a specific career path or know someone who'd like to be interviewed, please email us at askalutely@gmail.com. That's basically absolutely without the BS.